Yo everyone, and welcome to another episode of Vestabond's Blood Box. We're here to talk about things metal, all things around metal and such. Today's video is going to be a little bit different, maybe a little more serious than some of the other ones. We're going to talk about some stuff I have wanted to do on this channel. I want to talk about some of these things, but kind of want to get the channel started first, kind of get a basis, get things going a little bit before we start delving into some of this. This is certainly not what the channel is going to be, but I think it's good to get into a little more of what the music we listen to is to us, and how it is important to us, and why it is important to us, myself included. So today it's going to be one of those videos, a little bit heavier content, heavier subject matter that we'll be talking about. So just a heads up on that before we get into it. But this all kind of started because yesterday Marty Worm put up a video about the darker side of collecting, vinyl collecting, and I appreciated him posting that because it does bring up this, and that's not what this video is about, but this kind of led to why I'm doing this today. He's talking about how there is really good fun aspects to collecting. That's why we all do this, right? It's a lot of fun. We enjoy it, but there can be concerns, and I recognize this in myself with maybe obsessing a little bit too much, and that can be stem from some mental health issues. And I think it goes across the board. That's not just vinyl collecting. Anything where you're obsessive, and if it starts affecting other aspects of your life, that can be a negative thing, of course. Just touching on it, watch that video to see what he was talking about. It was a good conversation he was having. Last night I did a live stream on my channel, which you can see. It was fun, a lot of fun. I think we got hit around 8 hours, something close to that. And Ken was on there, Ken's Death Metal Crypt, which was fantastic. And he was kind of talking too about how it's different for him. He's one of those guys that has a large collection, but it's responsible in how he acquires it. And it's not the same thing. So there's lots of gray areas when talking about anything negative with what we're doing, and really in any aspect of life. And the reason, again, for saying that is that kind of led to another conversation of what a lot of the modern music that's out there, sort of its purpose or reasoning, and certainly why I am into a lot of the more modern, maybe post-black metal or atmospheric black metal stuff. Let me just preface, too, before I go any further. When I'm saying these things, I'm going to be making a lot of generalizations, just for the sake of talking and getting it out there. But, of course, nothing I'm saying is 100% true all the time at all. So I probably won't keep hopping in and saying that just so it's not constantly repeated. But nothing I'm saying is black and white or the end-all, be-all of it. There's nuances to everything. So what we're talking about today is how, at least for me, a lot of the modern black metal music has helped me with my own mental health and helped me face some of my own challenges. I'm not going to get into some of the nitty-gritty details yet. I probably will in a later video, but this is a good introduction to some of that. And the point being, it's why we're passionate about a lot of this music, right? It means a lot to us. We all have different reasons for listening to it, but it is, some of it's just for pure fun, and it should be, and that's wonderful that it is something that's really fun. But I feel like also it can help us deal with some of the challenges we face, especially kind of in our own minds, and that can get really complicated sometimes. So. And I haven't scripted any of this, so I apologize. I'm probably going to be babbling a lot. So hopefully it'll make sense at the end. So to kind of to start with, what kind of came up last night that I was a little tipsy and sort of started this conversation, or was talking about this, was comparing, modern post-black metal or atmospheric black metal, and that encompasses a lot, funeral doom, depressive, suicidal black metal, things like that, to the 90s black metal scene. And why I think it evolved into that, like what the modern stuff has evolved into based from that scene. So in the 90s, black metal Mayhem as a point of reference, of course, but most of those bands, their whole thing was, the satanic imagery, right? That was really what they were going, their road they were going down with that. And we all know now, looking back on it, a lot of them weren't actually Satanists. They didn't really believe, they didn't believe in Christianity, so Satan is a part of Christianity, but it was just the rebellion against Christianity and how they felt it was bearing down on them, sort of as a forced nature. And coming from Missouri, which is where I come from, the Bible Belt, that is part of the reason why I latched onto it when I did find black metal later on, is because, evangelical religion is a big thing down there, and especially in the 90s. It started loosening up a little bit in the 2000s, but in the 90s you had things like the Satanic Panic and stuff like that, where people were literally being arrested for being accused of being Satanists and things like this, and most of them weren't. So it was kind of dangerous to have contrary beliefs to Christianity. So, you have your black metal scene, which comes out as a very, very strong antithesis to Christianity and that religion. And that was its purpose, right? It was challenging a system that some of these people felt like it was being overbearing on their lives. It's also worth noting, too, which leads into, when I get to it, some of the modern stuff. A lot of these guys in the 90s when they were doing this were kids. They were young. Mayhem's first album, Death Crush, came out in, what was it, I think 86, 87, something like that. And I think they were 16, 17 years old, something like that. And also, where they were, they're kind of in a lot of isolation, and that can do some really interesting things to humans when you're put in... or kind of in isolation from a lot of other humans. We're very social creatures. Even I'm a I'm a homebody. I like to stay at home and stuff, but we all still have to have that social connection. Even if we think we're kind of antisocial, our brains do need people to be around us. So that can really affect mental health if you're really secluded. And because I'm a big Mayhem fan, and I'm using them as kind of the prime example. Of course, they're historically the ones that caused a lot of the noise with all of the history of suicide and murder and things like that. We all know the story with that. But I feel like a lot of that stems from some of the isolation they were subjected to, and also intentionally putting themselves in. So something that starts as an idea, to be anti-establishment and anti-Christianity and all that, and it's sort of we're badasses, we're kind of dark and stuff. It started to circulate and got a little maybe out of hand, unless you have some of the stuff that happens later on. An opinion, I go back and forth on what I think about all of it, but just kind of a hot take, if you will, on all that. So that's the 90s black metal. I feel like moving on, when you get into the 2000s, a lot of things change, right? The metal scene's doing some interesting stuff. Black metal is big in the 90s. It's kind of going underground. It always was underground, but going back into the underground in the 90s and stuff. And then you get in the 2010s, and we have a lot of new bands coming out, stemming from stuff that was happening in the 90s and 2000s too, but atmospheric black metal, depressive suicidal black metal, these kinds of things start coming out a lot more and gaining a lot of popularity. And the subject matter is drastically different than we're Satanists, we're anti-religion and stuff. That starts kind of disappearing from this subgenre of black metal, and you start having a lot more discussion on, with just the easiest way to say it, mental health, and a lot of the concerns that a lot of people go through with dealing with depression, anxiety, all the things we hear all the time. And I do think that's a big part of a generational shift too, because I'm 30. How old am I? 33? 32. Shit, I should know that, right? I think I'm 32. I was born in '88, so I'm a right solid millennial. And we had a different experience growing up. There's no doubt about it that we were coddled, and I'm not saying this as a controversial thing. I'm not saying that it was right or wrong. I'm not saying I certainly don't agree with how my generation has been attacked on stuff, but that's not the point of saying this. But we were Systematically, we had the ribbons for everything, all the stuff people like to say, right? Oh, you get an award for everything and all that sort of stuff. I'll always say it wasn't our fucking choice, right? We didn't choose that. But anyways, we did have that. And so we've had an interesting experience as we're getting older of dealing with the world being not quite as we expected. Now, I don't want to say darker than we expected, because something that I have found in my generation, and this is one of those things that this is a generalization, doesn't mean it for everybody, obviously, but, we weren't punished physically, right? That was a big no-no when I was a kid in the 90s and stuff. That was a big movement against that. But there was, I feel like, a lot of unintentional emotional damage that was put on us, a lot of mental, for lack of a better word, passive-aggressive behaviors towards kids that, of course it's not intentional, but it messes with you. All of us have our things in our childhood that mess with us, and of course lots of situations are far more extreme than others. But it is something that plays on us a little bit. So as we get older, we start kind of going through some issues with depression, and I'm really relating from my own experience here. Getting out into the world and thinking that things are going to be okay and right, and we have a voice and there's things we can do, and that just having truth to it, but certainly not being as linear as we think it's going to be. A big part, too, is something that happened in my generation. Well, it happened to everybody that's alive now, for the most part, if you were born in 2000 or on, or, of course, before, is we experienced 9/11. I mean, it's something that, it was a very, very, very nationwide traumatic event that us being kids experienced and had to watch, basically, the world around us sort of crumble, and watch, people that need help not get it, and people be thrown out on the street for decisions that, sure, they maybe shouldn't have made them, but there's also a system in place to try to keep people from making decisions that are not in their best interest. Now, saying that, I'm not placing the blame on anybody. I'm just saying, the financial crisis that happened, and certainly with the housing crisis and stuff, we all know that was a very muddy situation that really just had to do with corporations wanting to get as much money as they can out of out of people. So, we were growing up with all of that. We're losing faith in the world around us and the systems in place that are supposed to help us and protect us. And it causes a lot of just, what's the word I'm looking for? Not disassociation. I can't think of it. It just causes a lot of negative thoughts and emotions, right? So long ramble there, but the point of that, how does that pertain to the music, right? Well, you have a lot of bands starting to come out that are going to start tackling a lot of those emotional issues that a lot of us are having. Suicidal thoughts, a lot of depression, anxiety is a big one for a lot of us. And so this music is really appealing in that sense to me, because growing up, in a system where everything's taken care of, right? We're being coddled and all of that, but I feel like a lot of us were also not really allowed to have negative emotions. We were constantly told how great things were, and anytime a negative emotion would come out, it was kind of punished. So we've stuffed all that down a lot, because even in the best of times, people are going to have negative emotions. It's natural. It's something you can't control. It's in your brain. It's what brings the balance of everything. You have to have that balance. So, that gets suppressed in a lot of us. Our negative feelings, our negative emotions, we just push them down and push them down and push them down, because why are we having these? We shouldn't be feeling this stuff. So this music starts coming out, and so this is kind of how I got in line with it. And there's a lot of gaps here with my personal story that I will fill in at a later time. But so this music starts coming out, and it starts basically just talking about some of the horrific stuff that we as humans think and do and have to deal with. And it's easy to see on the outside how it's like, well, that's disgusting. Why would you talk about that? Why would you, maybe view it as glorifying things like suicide or stuff like that. But that's not what it is. It's literally just saying these are thoughts many people have, these are experiences many people have, and it's okay to confront them, it's okay to look at them, it's okay to be conscious of your own feelings and your own thoughts about how you are. Because when it comes down to it, reality is just what we see, right? You watching this, you're having a different reality than I'm having sitting here saying it to the screen. So pain within people is as important as the next person. It's something that we have to understand exists and not run away from. So I feel like a lot of this music, with the depressive suicidal stuff, funeral doom metal, certainly atmospheric black metal for some bands, really starts to tackle some of that. So let's talk about some of those, right? One that I'm going to start with here, because this was kind of my first experience with, really kind of exploring my own negative thoughts and emotions and kind of trying to look at that a little bit. And this isn't really a metal record, but 9 Inch Nails' The Downward Spiral. So I hear this for the first time when I'm probably about 11, I think it was. And I was listening to, things were coming out like Linkin Park and Stained and a lot of the new metal stuff, right? And, you got to give those bands credit. I know production-wise they're really cheesy and corny and stuff, but a lot of those new metal bands were actually talking about some very real issues with mental health, depression, and all the things I'm talking about. Even Korn, like, if you look at their first album, the song Daddy, I mean, that is a hard song to listen to. Really hard song dealing with rape. And it's just a tough one. So, these bands are dealing with this, and certainly this album, which, as many of you know, is basically a concept album about Trent Reznor's addiction issues, which also deal a lot with the mental health issues he was having. But there's the thing that really caught me on this and kind of set the stage for me for getting into metal and black metal later on is some of the more just musical interludes. So like the song, let's see if I can remember the name of it here. It is, where is it? A Warm Place and Eraser, which is right after that also. So A Warm Place is a really dark but beautiful musical interlude between these very harsh, aggressive, angry songs. It's disturbing, but in a very beautiful, ethereal way. And that kind of clicked with me, because I was at that time, I was still pretty young, and I was really having trouble with puberty's coming on, right? That's just naturally going to have some strange emotions and things coming along with it, but also later on in my life, looking back at that time, realizing I was dealing with my own issues with some trauma and stuff that I wasn't aware of at that time, but dealing with handling some of my own emotions, and realizing that it's okay to confront and accept that these thoughts and these feelings are real, and also kind of seeing it as it can also kind of be a beautiful thing. It's okay to feel bad. It's okay to find some beauty in that, if you will. And I know that sounds kind of fucked up, but having some beauty in the negative thoughts and accepting that is a part of what makes us human. It's a part of the whole. You don't get to have the good without the bad. If you had all good, it wouldn't be good. It just would be. So there's no experience that is what it is without the antithesis, because it just wouldn't be an experience then. So this album really got me into that. Really sort of started this kind of search for darker stuff that just kind of relieved the pressure within myself, and that's kind of the only way to explain it. Is I didn't understand at the time why, and I still don't completely understand it, but listening to some of the darker stuff makes me feel better. I mean, physically makes me feel better. Like that tightness you can get in your chest when you're feeling bad, it helps relieve that. And I think it's just because there's an outward expression coming from somewhere that literally it can take it off of you. Because that's kind of the big problem, right? When it's held inside, it has nowhere to go. So you kind of have to have some outward place for it to go, and music like this can help be a platform for that to rest on. So yeah, this was a big one for me. There's lots of music that is involved with this. This is probably a topic I'm going to talk about again at other times, here and there. And we're going to land on the last album, which is kind of one we talked about last night. But what we're listening to now, Funeral Mourning, which I also have the vinyl of. You've seen me talk about this one before because this is a big one for me. This kind of stuff, and again, this album I've seen labeled as funeral doom metal and also depressive suicidal black metal. This kind of stuff is understandably, I think, hard for some people to accept because it does talk so much and so deeply and emotionally about some of the negative aspects of being human and some of our own negative thoughts, but does it in a really beautiful way. I mean, you can hear it. I've got it here in the background. I mean, to me, this is beautiful. This sounds beautiful to me. So it's just heavy stuff. But I started getting really drawn to this kind of music. And again, not because it was compounding those negative thoughts into a darker place. It was helping to release that. It was helping to know that, hey, other people feel this too, and other people feel it really dark in a really bad way too. So it's not unnatural, it's not inhuman, it's not just me, right? That's what it comes down to. It's not just me. So, great album for that. Let me see here. Another one too. This one's straight up depressive suicidal black metal. I mean, hell, they even got the nooses on the name. But another great band that just does the same thing. It's really heavy subject matter that they're talking about and dealing with, but really beautiful and presented in such a way that it makes it feel more human and not as not as dark. I mean, making something that's really dark and making it putting it out there in a way that we can digest it in a way that creates a positive outcome. So this is Thy Light, No Morrow Shall Dawn. Their first album is great too, so if you've not heard of this one, beautiful, beautiful stuff, especially if you're into the funeral doom kind of music. And some modern bands that are really doing it for me. One I'd like to talk about too, and you've heard me talk about this band before, but Panopticon. Austin, it is impressive how I appreciate how willing he is to put himself out there in the world. As you know, like one of the last splits with Nachachwin, and then another one he's talked about his kids and some of the really, really hard things he's had to go through with that. He also talks a lot about his own emotional experiences. Like when you look at Kentucky and some of the older stuff, that's more politically motivated and really, really well done. I mean, again, I don't know how anyone can listen to Kentucky and not be pro-coal union after that. But some of the later stuff has moved away from the overtly political realm and moved more into self-awareness and reflecting on his own emotions. And a song that just really hits home for everything I'm talking about is on this split with Aerial Ruin. Aerial Ruin's also amazing. But the song The Pit on here. Luckily I was fortunate enough to get to see him, Aerial Ruin, and Nachachwin do an acoustic set at Hammerheart Brewing when this came out, these two splits came out. And he started the song by just saying, I was in a really dark place when I wrote this, so that's what this is about. And it's beautifully done. It's a beautiful acoustic folk song, made a little bluegrassy, but very heavy content. I'm trying to remember because I don't have the lyrics. It doesn't have the lyrics in here, but I think the line in the chorus is something like, I had to dig a hole, and this is not exact, but something like I had to dig a hole in the ground so I had a place to fall because he was already so low. It's just beautiful because, again, I think it's really difficult when musicians or artists of any form, not just metal, but anywhere, are putting this stuff out there because you're exposing something that is in the deepest recesses of your own existence and your own mind for the world to judge and to interpret as theirs. So especially when lyrics are poetic but even more literal, kind of like the Pit, that's really putting it out there for everyone to see. It's very personal. It's almost like standing butt-ass naked in front of everybody. But the end product, I feel, for a lot of people, myself included, is it again, you aren't alone. It makes you feel like you're not alone in your experience with what you're having. The experience may be different, but ultimately you are going through things that other people have before and other people will in the future. So, killer album. Also, I'm sure you've seen everybody talking about this and the other split. Both of them are gorgeous splits. So, check this one out for sure. Let's see. Also, so kind of getting into some albums I've had in heavy rotation lately. This one too, another bind run release. I've been waiting to talk about this one because this is absolutely one of my going on my end of the year 2020 list for releases. Obsidian Tongue, Volume 3. This is one too where, because we're talking about a lot of these, we're talking kind of about the lyrical content, but it's also the music that really brings forward the emotion of all the things I'm talking about. 9 Inch Nails, like I said, it was a song without lyrics that really hit home with me. And I think this album, because I tend, so aside from this, something about me, I tend to listen to the music first before I listen to the lyrics. It's just something I always have. I'm more drawn to the music and how that makes me feel more so than the content of the lyrics. But as I get older and start thinking about music a little bit more and start trying to spend a little more time with it, I am starting to understand, and just looking at how damn good some of these songwriters are in expressing what they're trying to say. But this album really does that for me. I do want to read some lyrics to some of these just to kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about on this content. So on this one, I'm going to read them here. This is the song. Which one did I have pulled up? Empath, which is track number 4. So this is right before the vinyl song on this is a really gorgeous, not heavy, but a gorgeous emotional piano piece with no lyrics. Perfect way to end this album. But this is the song right before the last song on the album. And these are the lyrics. Close his eyes now as he lays in your arms. One last song before you dig, as it always was, and as it shall remain. Walk straight away, don't look at the grave. Remember you will forget by morning, as it always was, and as it shall remain. I tomb myself every evening, and let the dreams fade in denial. But from behind the wall of sleep, the thunder rolls closer to the wall. Here lies the empath. The life force has been released into the soil moaning beyond these wooden walls. My energy will never leave, will only change form to hunt you down. I've chosen my degradation. My sulfur needs me here aware. The wall of sleep will not be scaled by you. The thunder will not breach the other side. Self-doubt blurs the lines between depression and depravity. Too blind to truly see the carcasses around. Shadows dragging them to the hills could not pierce one layer of this total emotional recession. Let the rapture be my last. The war has begun. Stick your hand in the ivy, right where you hid them last. This time those stones will whisper back. So yeah, I'm sorry, I've flubbed up a few of them there, but yeah, just wonderful, gorgeous lyrics. The music on this really hit home with me. First time I listened to it, I listened to it all the way through, and I felt this album. I really felt this album. So you've heard me talk about it in the chats and some of the live streams and stuff. I will bring this album up because it really, really does it for me. So, if you've not still available at Bind Rune, the split with another band that Obsidian Tongue did is also on there as well. So, really one worth picking up. It is a really, really masterfully done album. So, definitely check that out. So on that note too, talking about how, the music along with the lyrics is kind of what makes everything. The truth is it's lyrics and words are beautiful and can express a lot, but their art, in my opinion, is language. It's just language in a different form other than verbal communication, because you can express some things in ways that are more mental, or more like in your head, like how there's actually more emotion that you can tie in with maybe visual art, or especially music, that is hard to express in just saying words. And that's why we have art and music, right? It adds into the entirety of what human language is. So, music can really hit home on some feelings and emotions that just poetry may not be able to quite touch. And I'm not like knocking lyrics or poetry. Obviously, they're a massive part of this, and a huge part of being able to express yourself. But music definitely adds a lot to that as well, especially for setting the tone. Because it's the thing, right? There's two things that will trigger nostalgia more than anything else. It's not necessarily hearing words, it's hearing music and smell are the two things that just can take you right back to a feeling and a place. So, it's why this is my argument for music actually is important, and it does have a place beyond just entertainment. Nothing wrong with it just being entertainment too, and nothing wrong with getting enjoyment for something just because it's enjoyable. It doesn't have to be heavy, but I'm glad that there is music out there that can also help us deal with some of our own things. So, the last band I want to talk about in this discussion today, this nice, lovely, heavy discussion we're having. Not like there's enough shit going on in the world that, it's already heavy on us, but, it's worth talking about. But this came up in conversation last night, too, on the live stream. Numenorean is a band that I feel like is really, really hitting on the nerve of emotional music in today's time with their last few albums. If you're not familiar with Numenorean, they have 3 albums out, US band, signed by Season of Mist after they put out their 2-song demo. I mean, Season of Mist snapped them up immediately, and then they came out their next few albums. So this is also this album cover. If you're a metalhead, you've seen this, it's not going to be a problem. But just in case someone's watching this that is not familiar with some album covers of metal albums, this is why there was a disclaimer at the beginning of the video, so just heads up, this is a graphic image that's coming up. But yeah, this was the second album from Numenorean called Home. And as you can see, it's a rather disturbing album cover. This is a real picture of a child who is deceased. It does matter because it's being used as an album cover, but this photo's from the 70s. This young girl's father is the one who killed her. But that's not so much the reason it was used. What I have heard, Numenorean, when they were interviewed about this, because they got a lot of negative feedback on this album cover, and I understand why, absolutely, especially if you're not familiar with what a lot of these bands are trying to do, and you're just seeing it as maybe it looks like it's just exploiting a graphic image for the sake of sales. I can understand people being angry about that. That is not the case, in my opinion, with this at all. There was absolutely a very conscious reason for them to use this image with this album. So I'll read you what it says here on the inside. So, Numenorean. The pain of life's journey does not relent. It beats against the soul's shores until the spirit is eroded. The child dies smiling in the bliss of eternal unknowing. Comfort is found in the abyss. The destination seems bleak, ingrained deep within us. As its depths we find what we have known all along. Home. So what I've heard them say about this is basically the content that they're dealing with on this album is that we will never be as innocent or as close to childhood as we are when we die, right before we die. That is the closest we will ever get to being that pure innocence of a child and the view of the world. Because it's at that moment everything else disappears. That's it. That's you are at the end. So heavy shit, right? Sorry, I know this is some heavy stuff. But this again. The point of this is I think this can help a lot of us process our own thoughts on death and our own depression and our own anxiety and all of these things. So this is a beautiful album. Same thing I've been saying with a lot of the other stuff. It's heavy content. It's dark, but it brings in a lot of beauty with it too. So I'll read you one of the songs from this album. Oh no, I'm sorry. It's actually on the next album. I've got the two pulled up here. So, but lots of amazing stuff. This is a killer album. The album that's really been getting me, and actually the first album I heard from Numenorean before I listened to this one, was their second album, which is called Adore, I believe. Yes, Adore. This is their second album, second full length. Same thing, man, when I heard this for the first time, I was like, motherfuck, that's good. Damn, it's good. And I wasn't even familiar with the content, but it's just really powerful music that they've written for this. But man, the second song on here, it's really the first official song, because the first song is more of a musical intro, but then the first actual song is called Portrait of Pieces. And this is, boy, this one gets me. And this is one, I highly recommend listening to Portrait of Pieces, because it's the music, it's the lyrics, and it's the way that lead singer sings it, especially at the end. You can hear, I mean, his voice is cracking with emotion, and it's just you feel it. It washes over you as you're listening to that song, how much emotion he is putting out into this. One of those things is amazing that they were able to capture it, because I can't imagine it's something he did multiple takes on to make sure it's just right. It is an emotional moment when he's singing it, and it was just captured just right. So here are the lyrics to Portrait of Pieces. Let's see if I can do it without flubbing up some of the words here. I am the father of lies, feeding on time. I am the mother of your cries, so divine. I am the psycho of your shrine, so divine. I am the one you left behind, so divine. Longing for a time that doesn't exist, that stone you pull that stone you pull to pull you through. Drag this stone across the land. Visions no more, blind mirror staring back at me. I'm not sure what's worse, the words you said or the things you did, and it all turns out, but I feel my heart get right again. But I rise so low from missing you. The tears that we shed fall on these broken shards of lives that are lost. Our shattered minds feel the cost. The only love I know is you. Where are you? Where are you now? I'll never forget. Wandering alone, a portrait of pieces. The sweating sun paints the walls with midday misery. Repetitions are longer. Health was never in my name. My hands are strangers. They assist my end. So yeah, that's some heavy stuff, right? But just beautifully said, and that's the part I'm talking about when he's just screaming, and it's just so emotional. His voice is cracking with the emotion he's putting out. Is that my hands are strangers, they assist my end? Is at the very end where he's saying that. It's just so impactful. And again, the point of saying all of this is, it's not. I feel like it's not exploitation of negative emotions. It is genuinely trying to get this out there. And when it's out there, then anyone who's struggling with issues like, mental depression or anxiety or the numerous things that can be going on, it helps to see that it exists externally from you as well. Because we feel like I said before, we feel like everything we're holding so hard inside of us, and it's just this pit that you almost can't get rid of. But when you see it exist externally from your own body, coming from someone else, and you understand it's not just me, and then some of that can be pulled out of you and put on something, I feel like that is a really important and wonderful thing that modern music can do. And these kinds of things, talking about this kind of music, has existed for a long time. I mean, coming from a place of personal angst and emotion is a big part of where a lot of music has come from in the past. But I feel like, at least me, being a metalhead and being into metal, there are a lot of bands that are really digging into that aspect of their own psyche and their own experience, and doing it with the hope that it helps and maybe saves someone in the future. So, yeah, sorry, again, really heavy content today on my channel. You know, the channel is going to be light and fluffy. That's not the intention of just always having dark stuff. But I feel like this is something, since we talked about it last night on the live stream, and it's something I've been thinking about and kind of wanted to put out there. And I also think it's good to talk about this stuff. Like I was saying in the beginning, I appreciated Marty for talking about an aspect of collecting that can be negative and something to watch out for. And it's good to have a well-rounded conversation about what this music is, what it means to us, why we listen to it, why it exists. You know, it's good to talk about every facet of it. So that was the purpose of this today. I will be having more conversations about it in the future, not back to back. You know, I'll get into some of my own personal experiences with this. And also, no, talking about this, I have been in dark places and gone through stuff. I am in a fantastic place since we moved to Minneapolis, so I am okay and mentally okay now. So don't think that you know everything's all doom and gloom. You know, it's all good, but you know, it's worth sharing old experiences that we've had. So we'll get into that in the future. But I really appreciate you watching this one. I really appreciate you hanging in there with me. Share your thoughts, of course, in the comments. I want to hear what you think about all of this and hear your thoughts as well. So, love you all. Metal forever. Stay safe out there.